Roger Stone here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history. That's actual physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or you're retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone right now for your free Roger Stone Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit. Or call 800-747-6589. That's 800-747-6589. Call now to receive your free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore.
Stephen Moore is with us, economist.
With more than 30 years experience as an economist and as a leading thinker of government on business, showing deep understanding of the shifts in the global economy. He's leading economist Steve Moore with More Money on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC Talk Radio. We are on every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3 p.m. on WABC and many affiliates throughout the country. And welcome also to the people listening online. Appreciate you spending some time on a Saturday afternoon with us. We're really proud of the fact that we have a big audience and we have a smart audience. And so appreciate this opportunity given to me by the great John Catsimatidis, who is the owner of WABC and has really turned this station into a blockbuster. Incidentally, most of the other shows, you're going to, if you don't flip your dial, but if you were to flip your dial, you'd mostly just hear canned advertisements. And we have on this show on Saturday, starting from 10 in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, real economics, real politics, real finance that is not canned. It's not a commercial. It is trying to inform you about how to be as successful as you can. And that's why I'm so honored to follow the great Larry Kudlow on this same station. So a lot to talk about. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about this week. I wanted to start with the compare and contrast between what's going on with the Trump message and the Kamala Harris message. And I've got to tell you, I've been doing this for 40 years. I covered, Michael Dukakis. I covered Walter Mondale. I covered, John Kerry and even Hillary Clinton. And this Kamala Harris, boy, I've never seen anything quite like this. She is has the most radical anti-business, anti-investor agenda of any candidate that I have seen in my lifetime, a major candidate for president. And then you've got this vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, who is maybe even worse than Kamala. I mean, I look at his record. He has been a disaster as governor of Minnesota. This is a guy who had a government helpline, so you could snitch on your neighbors if they dared, violate any of the COVID rules. I mean, God, what is this? The Soviet Union with people spying on each other? So it's a scary ticket. And I'm not here to tell you that Donald Trump is a saint. He is not. I'm a little biased, though, because I have worked for Donald Trump and I'm an advisor to him. And sometimes he listens, sometimes he doesn't, but I've come to greatly admire him. I think he is smart, obviously, because of what he's done in his career. But I think he cares so much about the American people. And I think if you look at the economic agenda of these two candidates, in other words, if you put aside the personalities, let's face it, Kamala Harris is a very pretty smile and she's a beautiful woman and, that kind of thing. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a woman of color as our first woman of color president? Yeah, that would be all a great thing. But what about your wallet? What about the pocketbook issues? What about the issues you talk with your husband or your wife or your family with around the kitchen table? Those are probably the most important issues. And I'm saying that because they are for my family, but also every poll shows the economy is issue number one. And it should be, because the future of your job, the future of your 401k plan, the future of your paycheck are all dependent on us getting this right. Now, if you believe, folks, that the country is headed in the right direction right now, then you probably should vote for Kamala Harris. If you think 4 more years of this that we've seen in the last 4 years would be desirable, I'm telling you, I think you should vote for Kamala, because she's going to give you 4 more years of probably worse, but at best, 4 more years of what we just had. And I think she's actually shown herself to be even to the left of Joe Biden in terms of her policy decisions. I'm bringing my friend John McLaughlin, one of the top pollsters in the country, on. I had some previous conversations with him, and you'll hear what he has to say when he comes on. But he was telling me that most Americans just don't know that much about Kamala Harris. They don't know the fact that she was the most liberal vote in the United States Senate when she was there for, I think she was 4 years in the Senate before she was tapped to be the vice president. She was to the left of Bernie Sanders. She was to the left of Elizabeth Warren. So this is not a moderate. This is not a centrist. This is not someone who cares about business and small business and cares about, the American family, because her policies are simply pro-government. And now let's talk about the tax plan that she's come up with. And I want to walk you through this because it's really important you understand the math here and the dangers in what she's talking about. So Kamala has not given us the full details for her plan, but according to the New York Times, it is almost a $5 trillion tax plan. That is not just the biggest tax increase in American history. As I said on Fox News the other day on the Hannity Show, it's the biggest tax increase in world history. Now, again, if you actually think that we can heal our problems in America by raising taxes by $5 trillion, you probably should vote for Kamala Harris. But I hope you don't believe that, because that is economic nonsense, right? You want to cut taxes. When you tax something, you get less of it. When you tax something less, you get more of it. So we want to encourage people to invest. We want to encourage people to work. We want to encourage people to start businesses. We want to encourage people to save money and all of those things. Well, the tax that Kamala Harris is talking about, the cascading effect of all these taxes would mean that in investment, I'll give you a concrete example. Let's say you have $100,000, that you've saved, and you want to invest that $100,000 in a small business. And as you know, 2 out of 3 small businesses fail. I've started small businesses. 1 or 2 of them have succeeded. Several of them have failed. That's the way life goes. You don't always win. There's a lot of honor and courage in starting a small business. And I know so many of you that are men and women who are listening to this show have started small business. It ain't easy. It's not easy at all. You're the last person that gets paid after all your employees get paid. Only if there's money left over do you get money, which is called a profit. Kamala Harris seems to think that a profit is evil. She talks about greedy corporations that try to make a profit and greedy small businesses that are jacking up their prices. Kamala, why don't you try to see if you can make a profit before you talk about how greedy these companies are? Because it is not easy. It is not easy to make a profit and to provide customers with a service or a good that they want at a price that they're willing to pay. Boy, it's tough. It's very tough. And I'm saluting the men and women who do it every day. And, sometimes you make no money and sometimes you make a lot of money, and that's America. And we were built by small business entrepreneurs. I mean, I just had to laugh when I saw Kamala Harris saying, we're going to do all these things for small businesses. We're going to reduce the red tape. Really? This is an administration that has added $50,000 per household of regulations. $50,000? And now she's saying she wants to reduce red tape? There's no administration that can match the Biden and Harris administration for adding red tape. And now she says she wants to eliminate it. It's almost as comical as when she says she wants to build the wall, when all she said for the last 5 or 6 years is she's against the wall. And so anyway, get back to this idea of taxes. So she wants to raise the capital gains tax. Well, she just changed her mind the other day. First, it was going to be 44%. Now she says she's going to only raise it to 28%. But remember, there's a 5% surtax on top of that. So there's a 33% capital gains tax if she keeps her word. Lord knows. I mean, literally, so folks, this changes every few years. I can't keep up with the woman. And so a 33% capital gains tax, but she wants to raise the corporate tax rate to 28%. And then you add 5% state and local tax. So you think about it like this. You got the corporation that pays the tax, when you make a dollar profit, the corporate tax takes 33 cents of that profit. So now you're down to 67 cents, if you follow my math there. So the federal government on the corporate tax, the business tax, takes 33% right off the top. Now you're left with 67 cents on the dollar. Now, if you make a capital gain on that, you're going to pay another 33% tax. But remember, the state and local governments add another 5%, so you're close to 40%. So now you've got on your $670,000 gain, let's say on $1 million thing, now you're paying 40% more of that in the tax. You're getting, when you take into account all these taxes, then by the way, if you die with that stock, you're going to actually pay a tax on top of that. What I'm telling you is you're going to pay 50, 60, 70, in some cases 80% tax. And that's just on the nominal gain. Remember, we've had 20% inflation. You don't get to index your capital gains tax for inflation. So you could actually be paying tax. I'm not making this up, folks. You could pay tax on an asset that adjusted for inflation didn't even make any money. So your real tax could exceed 100%. Do the math. I know a lot of you are thinking I'm making this up. I'm not. If you had a gain that was less than the inflation rate, you could have to pay a real capital gains tax above 100%. Here's my point. Who's going to invest in that kind of environment? Who's going to invest in a small business and a startup? Not many people. Not many people are going to put their money at risk at those high tax rates. What does that mean? Small businesses will not be created. Folks, I want to say this loud and clear. It's your vote. You know, there are a lot of issues other than the economy, but you're going to kill small businesses. You're going to kill investment, and you're going to kill corporations. What you're going to do? No, you're not going to kill corporations. What they're going to do is they're going to leave America. They're going to go to Ireland, or they're going to go to, the Cayman Islands. They're going to go somewhere else where they don't have to pay these high taxes. It is a disaster. It is anti-business, anti-investor, anti-America to raise these taxes that high. We should be having a flat tax, keep the rate low, keep it simple. Don't have to hire, 50,000 new IRS agents. Let's have a sound economic and tax plan. I know a lot of you favor the fair tax, which would basically say, let's move to a sales tax. That would be much better than we have right now. But loud and clear, folks, this is the most audacious, most anti-business, anti-investor plan that I've seen of any modern candidate in my lifetime. And Trump said that this would cause a Great Depression. I don't know if it would cause a Great Depression, but I do know this. It would do severe damage to your paycheck, to your 401k plan, and to your job. Don't put it at risk. And ask Kamala Harris these things. I mean, she's got a pretty smile. She's got a nice laugh. She's getting adoring press treatment. But ask her about her plan and how does she justify doing to American companies what she wants to do. You cannot have a job if you don't have an employer. Companies are there to make a profit. I know some people think profit is a dirty word. Without a profit, you don't have a business. Without a business, you don't have a job. If without a job, you don't have a paycheck, and we all go to the poorhouse. And I don't want to be overly dramatic here, but this is a very risky plan, and it's putting your job and your lifetime savings at risk. And I'm not one to exaggerate things. I'm not one to hyperbole, but I am very, very scared of what these people are talking about. You should pay attention, folks, to what is being offered. Look at how they'll affect your own savings and your own paycheck, because I think it will be a total disaster. Meanwhile, Donald Trump wants to make his tax cuts permanent, which I think is exactly the right thing to do. Later in the show, I'm going to talk a little bit about this idea that Donald Trump is talking about with Elon Musk of creating a government efficiency commission. I love that idea. This is Steve Moore. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC Talk Radio, the #1 talk radio station in these United States. I'm happy to introduce my guest for this afternoon, Paul Stone, who is the CEO of Colonial Metals. And Paul, it is a great honor to have you on the show. Thanks for joining.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having us. We're all excited here at Colonial Metals Group.
So tell me, are you the founder?
Yes.
Okay. How'd you get into this business?
Well, I wanted to be able to come out and speak to folks where I could reach more people, easier and at the same time than just discussions on a phone call one at a time. I believe the message I have or have become aware of is critical for people to get their minds around just how severely deteriorated our financial system is standing. The fundamentals have eroded, and so started my own firm to do it.
When was that?
Oh, just a few years ago.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for doing that, because I agree with you. I think we're in big trouble financially. I always say, Paul, that when I first came to Washington in 1984, which was, if my math is right, 40 years ago, we talked about $100 billion deficits. Now we're talking about $2 trillion deficits. It's just mind-numbingly stupid what's going on in our nation's capital. And so let me tell you what I tell people. I'd like your reaction to this. I tell people there will be a day of reckoning. It's coming. You can't borrow $35 trillion and not pay a high price for that. And that I don't know when it's going to come. I don't know if it's going to come in 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years, but I do think that we're going to be punished in the financial markets for the craziness. Now, look, I also think that if Donald Trump were to win and get the ship headed in the right direction, we might be able to avoid the iceberg. But what's your take?
The iceberg is unavoidable. Probably we've already actually hit it, I believe.
So even if Trump wins, hold on. So even if Trump wins, you think we're going to pay a big price for what we've done?
If he were to take over power in the White House, would the government stop printing money?
Yeah, good point.
It's the point, though. Yeah. It's actually the point. So our high-flying financial experience, which many have enjoyed, has actually been an inflationary wind that blows at the backs of many, but blows in the face of most. The resource that wind draws on, like any hurricane, any storm, it's a temporary existence drawing on extreme demand on resources that are limited and temporary. What is the resource that they're burning through to have these high-flying finances and a $7 trillion government budget every year? The dollar itself. So the dollar's worth 100 cents in 1912. They create the Fed in 1913, and that was the last time the dollar was worth 100 cents. Today it's worth 3 cents. So if you thought of the dollar as something they were digging up out of the ground, they were mining dollars to artificially support and augment our financial world because the government can't have production from the economy overwhelm costs. The mine is 97% empty. So when you say how close are we to this day of reckoning, on average, and it's sped up in 2000, hopefully your economic listeners' aptitude for hearing about economics, this can be a little boring, but when the baby boomers retire, when 60 million people start leaving the workforce at peak earnings in 1997, doesn't that create a black hole in our finances? Because they've also left and gone on the cost side. Government could have foreseen that. Einstein said the mind that created the problem does not possess the solution. How could we have offset the baby boom population bubble like a volleyball going through a snake? It was nice and lovely while it was in its belly, but then eventually it comes out the back end, and now you have a system that can't cover the cost to run the show. So they print the money. I just saw that we're now borrowing $3 billion a day, folks. So this is catastrophically wrong. Right. I'm a little bit more. I do think, Paul, and I'd like your reaction to this. I think we can, if we start getting the policies right, we might be able to avoid a financial crisis. Numbers. But look, what's that? It's about numbers, though. It's not the policy's been wrong that created the bad numbers. But to switch bad math, you need great math. Where can the great math come from? Well, that's a very good point. But let me say this, because we have skeptics, people who think we'll be able to get through this. And I'm kind of on the fence on this. That's why I wanted to bring you on, Paul, just to get your perspective, because you're the expert. So, people have been saying, America is going to collapse for 30 years now. And, we keep swinging along and swimming along. And we still have the world's greatest economy. So what do you say to people say, oh, you're just a, fearmonger? What's GDP growth from 2010 to today without any printed money? Is it a positive number or a negative number? By my crude, rudimentary calculations, it would be a negative number. What would you call an economy for 14 years that had negative GDP? Would you call that a depression? Yeah, I sure would. When you count, although we've had real GDP growth without the printed money.
Yeah.
You see, so that's the point. Where I always focus on resources, right? When you look at football, because it's kicking off tonight, the lineman that wins in the scrum at the line of scrimmage is the one that goes lowest. So I want to go to the source of things and get out of talking about symptoms. I want to understand where it's coming from. When Nixon ended the gold standard, he allowed the government to print money at will. They didn't have to check in with us. We lost our power and their power gained. They just aren't very good at bringing solutions to the world, and they're burning through a resource. This is the key point to make. The storm exists as long as it has that resource it's drawing on. When the dollar's worth zero, what's your economy then? Okay,
then you have nothing.
But so that's what we're headed toward.
Yeah. So I'm talking to Paul Stone, who is the CEO of Colonial Metals and one of the experts on owning gold and owning other assets besides dollars. So let's talk about what's going on in the currency market. First of all, what do you think of cryptocurrencies? What's your thought about that?
It's an incredible invention. I understand that blockchain is a system that has a checks and balances built into it that works randomly to where you could never falsify a transaction. But when we look at the government issuing a currency and the government's in charge of currency, I think we're just changing the flavor of money for another set of problems the government will create. And also there's many dependencies. If we're comparing crypto to gold and silver, crypto lives in your phone, and we all live in our phones, and that's where we do all of our transactions. So it's convenient and nice, hand in glove with what we're used to. That's where the problems live, though, is in the digital financial world. When we move our money into gold and silver, we've left for the analog world where that absolutely becomes my financial property. And I don't have the dependencies on my gold and silver like I would with money in the digital financial world or crypto.
So I always tell people, my listeners, that everybody should own gold in their portfolio. It's just gold, in my opinion, Paul, is first of all, it's a safety net. It's a measure to protect you against war and against financial collapse and against an inflationary currency, all of which are risks right now. So, and we've just seen gold hit basically a new high, right? Do you see that continuing to, where are we now? What's the price? 2,500?
Yeah, it's in the 2,500 neighborhood. Yes.
Yeah. So, looking in your crystal ball over the next 5 years, what are you projecting roughly?
When we look at the dollar being worth 56 cents in the year 2000, and it's worth 2.7 cents today. Right. We maybe have a year and a half or 2 years, just mathematically on the averages, no crystal ball, just looking at the math story. Math is a language that cannot lie. Then a year and a half, 2 years from now, our currency is literally toilet paper with a face on it. And I don't even want to get into, the doom and gloom that creates, right? So if gold and silver is a trapped asset.
If that happens, then you're going to see the gold price rise, obviously.
It's a trapped asset.
It's a substitute.
Yep, it's really hard to find. The miner reports say we're only adding 1% to the above ground supply every year. And you might think the earth is covered in it, but let's remember that 70% of the earth is covered by an ocean. And no one's raising money to go drilling for gold and silver on the bottom of the ocean floor. So we're going to be stuck to the land masses, and we got ground penetrating radar and all the. So we're finding it as fast as we can. The world has always been seeking it, and we add 1% to the above ground supply every year. So that's a physical law that keeps it scarce. With Bitcoin, so if there's 21 million Bitcoin, can there be 42 million Bitcoin? Can there be 84 million Bitcoin? Who's controlling that? I don't know. You can tell me it won't happen, but in the law of physics, gold and silver creation cannot happen faster than it's happening.
So one question I get asked a lot, Paul, is if I'm going to buy gold, how do I do it? What do I do? Do I buy gold mining stocks? Do I buy gold bars and put them in my basement? Do I buy certificates? What do you recommend to people?
I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a trained economist. I'm just a layperson that's done a lot of research, and I'm always open to someone correcting my research with something proven, not just people's opinions, because I'm looking at math for the opinion. And math, again, is a language that cannot lie. So what do I think will happen? Well, you want to own the physical gold and silver. You want to remove all the dependencies off your money that you can possibly think of. You may not even want to own gold and silver minted in from the U.S. Mint. why continue to invite them into your finances if you have other options and you can avoid that?
Right. So what do you buy then? You buy gold bars, or?
Well, there's many different assets and there's different types of gold and silver. And that's a great conversation we have one-on-one with people. Those conversations can be 30, 40 minutes long. So I invite people to find us online or
how do they do that?
Yeah, colonialmetalsgroup.com, or we also have a special page built just for WABC listeners, Colonial Gold Guide, colonialgoldguide.com. I'm sorry, colonialfreegoldguide.com.
Okay. And do people pay a charge for that consulting?
No, we are here to help. Yep, we're here to help.
Okay.
We have a product, but it's also a solution to a problem. We want to make this as easy on people as we possibly can. Spend a little time with us, and we'll help pull the cobwebs away and help give credibility to your fears, the people that already have them, and their concerns about our financial future. And the location of your savings is where I say how you'll experience this upcoming financial crisis that history says is out in front of us, not Paul Stone, but the history says is there, will be driven by where your money was located when that crisis appeared.
So 2 quick questions on our way out. I've been talking to Paul Stone, who's the CEO of Colonial Metals. First question is, we did have a financial crisis in 2008, as you recall. How did gold do during that? Did people with gold protect themselves from that crisis?
So if you're coming into gold and silver, what I call the headlines phase, we saw headline warnings in 06, 07, 08 that things were not looking good, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we're all suffering this 08 issue a lot in many ways because of Bill Clinton's decision in the 90s to allow lending institutions to lend 10 times the amount of money that actually existed in their domain. So that's money printing, right?
Yeah.
So then we have this extreme chase after real estate. Bush is enjoying all these high-flying financial times, and it crashes right at the end of his presidency. And gold and silver flourished during those years. And I also liken gold and silver as a bridge from the cliff we're going to fall through and the valley you're going to have to wait and walk through and the cliff you're going to have to climb back up again. Gold and silver is the bridge over those cliffs. If you've left before the crisis begins, before the events phase begins, you've got a bridge over that chasm. When you're on the other side, the sun's shining again, you come out of gold and silver.
Yeah. So I'm not as pessimistic as you are, but I do think that we are in big trouble. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, Paul, to explain to people, how we deal with these, the tsunami that may be coming and may already be here. We've seen just, in the last 4 years, prices rising by 20 to 25%. And I think actually higher than that if they did an honest accounting. One last thing, Paul, if I may, on our way out. And I think so. Thank you so much on a Saturday afternoon for taking some time out to educate our listeners. Silver. Should we own silver?
Absolutely. When we just look at the charts, and again, no financial advice, no financial wizardry, no projections, really. We just look back at the charts. It seems that gold moves steadily during the headlines phase. And if you look now, it's beyond its all-time high set in 2012. So when we're looking at gold during Carter's inflationary period in 75, 76, it's around 200. And it's 600 when Reagan takes office.
Wow. Right.
You look at that watermark set by the horrific set of circumstances that all was about, and gold watermarks around 600. It was about 600 for a year, right? Silver moves, nicely leading up to that inflationary period, but when the damage starts occurring, silver goes from 4 into the 40s. So silver, by the time a human being comes to this conversation thinking, oh my gosh, my spidey senses are tingling, I'm worried here, I better do something about it.
Right.
Gold is already confirming for you, the trouble is in. Right, because when 08 starts, gold is around 700. That's higher than the watermark set at the end of Carter before the wheels fall off things in 08, and it peaks up at 2000. Okay. So silver has a lot more runway out in front of it.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that it doesn't move as much during the headlines phase. When the events kick off, then it runs hard. So silver's proximity to its all-time high is about halfway there. Gold's already beyond its all-time high. You're looking at gold for the confirmation that, yes, we have troubles out ahead of us, but own more silver than gold.
Oh, well, that's great. Great analysis. My guest this afternoon has been Paul Stone of Colonial Metals. Paul, can you come on again in a few weeks and keep us informed of what's happening? We got gold at 2,500. I mean, Lord knows. I mean, if you're right, we may be looking at gold at 5,000 sometime soon. I mean, is that preposterous, or do you think we could go to 5,000?
How is it we come to normalize thinking around Bitcoin once hit 70,000?
Yeah, that's a great point.
So, if gold and silver is also a trapped asset, if money slams against demanding owning it and we can't make more of it, then wouldn't the price go up? And if you're looking at maybe the end of the run from Nixon in 71 to now, we had a 56 penny dollar worth 56 cents in the year 2000. It's worth 3 cents. When that financial video game ends, this artificial financial world ends, based on the resource it's drawing on is exterminated, money crowding into gold and silver in a massive way, gold could be 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. Why not? Bitcoin kind of sets the precedent for something being extraordinarily, ridiculously highly valued because it's a trapped asset.
Thanks for your words of wisdom. Appreciate your educating us. Folks, this is the More Money Show, and we will be right back.
Thanks for having me.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC Talk Radio. Thanks so much for joining us on Saturday afternoon. I wanted to do a quick drop-by with my good friend John McLaughlin, who's one of the top pollsters in the country. He polls for Donald Trump and has got his finger on the pulse of what's happening politically more than just about anybody I know. So, John, thanks again for coming on for a quick interview. Give me a sense. We talked a couple of weeks ago. I saw that Donald Trump just gave a fantastic speech at the New York Economic Club on Friday, really outlining his economic plan. How do you think that went, and how do you think things are going for the campaign?
I think the campaign is going well because, as you know, Kamala Harris got a lot of great press from the media from the time that Joe Biden hand-picked her. I mean, but it's been quantified. I mean, our friend Brent Bozell at the Media Research Center, they did a study, and since July 21st, it's 84% positive for Kamala Harris out of the mainstream media and the big networks, and 89% negative against Donald Trump.
Now, does that measurement of the media include Fox News?
Yes.
And even with Fox News, which has been pretty good for Trump, even with that, taking that into account, it's still 84% against Trump.
Right. It's balanced. And but Fox is balanced, but the ABC, NBC, CBS.
Yeah, right. Everything
CNN,
else.
MSNBC. Yeah. So, and the amazing part is we found when we did a survey for Brent Bozell, 70% or more of Democratic voters and independents who voted for Biden in 2020, a survey of 1,200 voters, 70% or more don't know where she stands on the issues. 71% don't know she's for defunding the police. 74% don't know that she doesn't want to call illegal immigrants illegals and doesn't want it to be a crime. Right. And 75% don't know that she was the most liberal senator in the U.S. Senate. 81% don't know if she wants to eliminate private health insurance. So all they've been getting is vibes. Yeah.
Right.
But now Donald Trump's back in control, and what you're seeing is he's setting the agenda for the race.
Yeah,
and
he sure is.
And they're holding her accountable for her price control plan, which will call for shortages for those of us who remember gas lines and meat shortages.
And I remember.
And the tax increases she wants, where voters don't know that she wants to let the Trump tax cuts lapse. And then have the largest tax increase in the history of the United States. Yeah.
So, John, these are all good points. I'm amazed that people, that still to this day, a lot of people aren't aware of those positions. But I don't know what her positions are, John. I mean, seriously, every other day she's saying something different. I mean, now she's for building the wall. I mean, come on. Here's a woman who said it's the worst idea ever. It's un-American. It'll never work. It's stupid. I mean, these are all direct quotes. Now she's saying she's for build the wall. She said she's against fracking. Now she's for it. She said she was against for the Green New Deal. Now she's for it. I mean, almost every issue. I'm going to cut increase the capital gains tax. Oh no, I'm not going to increase the capital. Come on. How do people keep track of what her position is? And don't you think that's a liability? Because at least with Trump, you know, and I don't always agree with Donald Trump. I love the guy. I think he's been a great president, but I have my disagreements with him. But at least you know where he stands. I don't have any idea where she is.
Well, when you look at the polls, you'll get an idea what their strategy is, because they know there's just 2 months to go, and they're trying to run out the clock before people find out.
Right.
And you've got, when you look at the Real Clear Politics averages of polls, or you look at the recent Trafalgar Insider polls, and you're seeing that it's a dead heat. North Carolina, Trump's up 1. Pennsylvania, they're tied. Wisconsin, she's ahead by a point. Michigan, she's ahead by a point. Georgia, Trump's a little ahead. In Arizona, he's a little ahead. In Nevada.
But I want to get back to this issue, though, of like authenticity, because it seems to me one thing that people hate about politicians is when they, you know, stick their finger in the air and whatever the position is of the day, they announce that. And, you know, she talks about my values haven't changed. I don't think Americans even know what her values are.
No, well, they do. When they find out, it makes sense. She is Joe Biden's vice president, and and six out of 10 Americans will tell you she shares the blame for the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. And you know, whether it's and you're going to see videos from the Trump campaign, whether it's at his rallies or paid media, where she says Bidenomics is working, where she says she was the last person in the room when they surrendered Afghanistan. When she talks about,
she was the tie-breaking vote on 2 of the massive spending bills.
Yes, and that triggered inflation. That she's responsible for this inflation, and that's what the voters need to hear, and that's why we're looking forward to the debate this Tuesday, because President Trump can, you know, ask her to explain why she enabled Joe Biden. Why was she part and parcel of, as Joe Biden's vice president, of all these failed policies? And does she really deserve another 4 years after the last 4 years? I mean, we're not better off today than before, you know, she became vice president. Why do we want to elevate her to president? Why give her another chance? So
John, on the way out, and you've been really kind to take some time. I know how busy you are with doing the polling and working with Donald Trump on these things. You and I had a discussion off the air a couple of days ago. I had the idea of, and I want your honest opinion of it, because I'm not always right. I'm mostly right, but not always right. But I was suggesting that Trump should bring in Nikki Haley in some very high level position, maybe like announce that she's going to be the Secretary of State, because I've seen Nikki Haley, and I'm not a huge fan of Nikki Haley. I'm not against her. I'm not for her. I like some of the things she says, but I think she's excellent, John, in taking down Kamala in a way that a woman can take her down in a way better than men can. And so what do you think? I mean, do you think she'd help? And I want your honest opinion.
Well, it's up to Nikki Haley if she wants to help, because she came to the convention. She said she's voting for Trump. Right. And now it's a matter of her doing what other people, whether they're Democrats like Robert Kennedy or Tulsi Gabbard or Ron DeSantis, they're out there raising money for Donald Trump and campaigning with him. And if she wants to, with her you know, credibility and with her stature, if she wants to join and do that, then you earn your way on the team, but we have to win.
Good point.
And I don't look. I'm one of those people who I look at the polls, but you don't cut the pie until it's cooked, and this pie will not be cooked until November 5th. So we've got to really work hard, because early voting starts in November.
It's unbelievable.
In most of the battleground states. Yeah. So get in line, get absentees out, and let's go win this.
Yeah. Well, John McLaughlin, you're one of the smartest political minds there is out there, and Donald Trump is lucky to have you as an advisor with Kellyanne and other great political minds. So I appreciate you doing the show, and come on in a few weeks and let's get an update from you. That's John McLaughlin, folks, a great pollster. We'll be right back. This is WABC Talk Radio.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC Talk Radio. My next guest is the great John Fund. You all know John Fund from his many, many years as one of the lead writers on the Wall Street Journal editorial page. He and I served together for a while together on that esteemed opinion page, the most important opinion page in America. He also works with me at Unleash Prosperity and is a constant writer for National Review, a national icon. John Fund, thanks for joining.
We have nothing to talk about, of course.
All right, let's get right down to it, my friend. So I wanted to bring you on because I know some of my listeners are really worried about voter fraud, voter integrity. They're worried about non-citizens voting. And you're the expert on this. You've written the book on stealing elections. So let's start with the issue of this House bill that passed. I think it passed the bill, what they call the SAFE Act, which would basically require proof of citizenship to vote. Explain what happened there.
Well, it actually requires proof of citizenship to register to vote.
To register, okay.
And we don't have great evidence because there's a lot of people who don't want to collect the evidence about how many non-citizens vote. But we do have some evidence that a lot of non-citizens are registering to vote. And, of course, there's nothing to stop them at that point from voting. In fact, Governor Youngkin in Virginia just removed over 6,000 non-citizens from the voting rolls because he said, look, whether it was by accident or consciously, they're registering to vote. And previous surveys have found 20 to 25% of them do vote.
So if you talk about numbers that big, they could have a big impact on local elections, but even the national election.
Well, always remember the 2000 presidential race was decided in one state, Florida, by 531 votes.
That's pretty amazing.
We need is a repeat of 2020, where there are 3 or 4 states that are very, very close.
Right.
And there's lawsuits and arguments and division and polarization over that. Let's have honest and fair elections that everyone can agree on.
So the left says that. So basically, tell us about the vote that happened in the House. Virtually all the Republicans voted for this, but most of the Democrats voted no.
Every single Republican voted for it, and 5 Democrats, including 3 members of the Hispanic caucus.
Wow. And so I can't understand I understand why Democrats may want to allow non-citizens to vote, but I don't understand but the vast majority, isn't the polling showing that Americans support, that only citizens vote?
Oh, it's by over 70%, all demographic groups.
Yeah.
And, only a few cities currently allow non-citizens to vote in school board and local elections. New York City tried to do that, but a court overruled it. But the danger is if we have a lax attitude on this and we don't care and we don't enforce it, the pressure will build for some blue states to start allowing people to vote in local and state elections.
Yeah. So we now so what's the status of this? The bill did pass the House, but then what happened in the Senate? Or it didn't pass?
Of course, Chuck Schumer has no interest in it. So having another vote in the House over this budget continuing resolution will put more pressure on the Senate to address it. But, Steve, we even have a more pressing need. Tomorrow, Friday, North Carolina begins mailing out absentee mail-in ballots to voters, and other states are going to follow soon after. We have turned Election Day into 2 election months.
Oh my God.
Not only does it create confusion because we're going to have debates after people have already voted. We're going to have massive confusion. And let me just give you a number that should scare every American.
Wait, hold on. Just time out for 1 second. If somebody early votes and then they've changed their mind, they can't change their vote, can they?
In a couple states you can, but it's very complicated. And effectively in almost all the states you can't. You're locked in.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Now, here's the number that everyone should be scared about. The U.S. Election Assistance Commission says that in 2020, almost 15 million mail ballots effectively disappeared after they were given to the U.S. Postal Service to deliver to voters. Now, what happened to those? Well, the Postal Service is increasingly inefficient, so there's evidence some of them didn't make it or didn't make it in time. A lot of them, and I've seen this myself in Nevada, ended up in the lobbies of apartment buildings, never to be claimed, or if they were claimed, perhaps voted by somebody else. Some went to outdated addresses or the addresses of dead voters. Some went to vacant lots and businesses. Some were rejected by election officials when they were returned. 1.1 million of those ballots were sent to the wrong addresses.
Oh my
now,
God.
this creates massive confusion. It
And
means
fraud.
that people are going to get a ballot in their mail that often is not in their name, and there's an enormous temptation by some people to say, gee, I can have 2 votes for the price of 1.
Right. And so what do we do about that?
Well, we need a lot of scrutiny on Election Day and a lot of pressure on election officials to use the safeguards against improper mail-in balloting when they're counted. There are the safeguards like signature verification were often thrown out by states because of COVID and the enormous number of people who voted early and absentee. We have to make sure that officials follow the letter of the law, cross the T's, dot the I's, because 69% of people, Steve, in 2020 voted earlier by mail. 69%.
So it's not election day any longer. It's not even election week. It's not even election month. You're saying it's now election 2 months.
Well, even worse than that, Steve, if we don't monitor the election properly and have people agree that it was free and fair, we're going to have election day bleed into election 2 months of arguments and lawsuits and everything else. We're going to take this process to a 4-month process when it used to take 1 day.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So this is something I've never asked you about before, but when you were talking about the potential fraud, let's say you are caught voting twice or signing someone else's name to a ballot or something like that. What kind of penalties are attached to that?
Well, the first problem is prosecutors, first of all, hate these cases because they're very political. If you're an ambitious prosecutor, you're going to anger half the political community depending on which candidate benefited from this. So they tend to put this at the bottom of the pile. In addition, they have to prove motivation. If they can't prove that you did this consciously and willfully, they almost never prosecute.
That's so bad because that means it's like a crime that's never punished, and that only encourages.
To prevent it before it happens.
Yeah.
By the way, and you asked what the impact can be. Look, Joe Biden carried Arizona by 10,000 votes in 2020.
Yeah.
In Phoenix alone, there were 110,000 ballots that were sent to outdated or wrong addresses.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Biden carried Nevada by 33,000 votes. Las Vegas's Clark County sent 93,000 ballots officials say are unaccounted for. They went to outdated or wrong addresses. Now, most of those simply were thrown away or nothing was done to them. But there was nothing preventing anyone from voting in someone else's name, and we would never have found out.
So just in our last minute then, John, how do you feel about the election process this year in these states like Pennsylvania and Arizona and Georgia, the ones that obviously really matter, those 5 or 6 battleground states? Do you feel like the safeguards are there to have a safe election? Does more need to be done? It's too late.
We have to have proper enforcement, and we have to have a lot of election observers. The situation is better in states like Arizona and Georgia. It's worse in states like Michigan. It's about the same as it is.
Well, why is it worse?
Because Governor Whitmer of Michigan and the Democratic legislature have basically changed all the election rules, tossed a whole bunch of things out, and made it much, much easier to have chaos and confusion. In Pennsylvania, it's a mixed bag, but there's a battle now in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Will they allow absentee ballots, mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day without a postmark? Will they allow them to be counted?
It depends. That depends on who's winning, right? If Kamala Harris is winning, they'll probably say no. And if Trump is winning,
it could be decided county by county.
Oh, I know.
The 14th Amendment problem: are you having equal justice under law if one county has one set of rules in counting ballots and another county next door has another set of rules?
Well, there you have it, folks. We've got a big election coming up. I'm not so sure that we've really tightened up this process enough. We've got 8 to 10 million illegal immigrants in the country. If even only 5% of them are voting, that's another 500,000 votes, and we know which way those people would probably vote. So it's a scary situation. We have to do the best we can. But John, thanks for educating us on this issue and for being a guard dog, because that's what we need. We need to call these people out if they're cheating. Everybody wants an honest election. John Funn, thanks for joining, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore.
Stephen Moore is with us, economist.
With more than 30 years experience as an economist and as a leading thinker of government on business, showing deep understanding of the shifts in the global economy. He's leading economist Steve Moore with More Money on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the second hour of the More Money Show on WABC. Thanks so much for joining and taking some time out of your Saturday afternoon. Before I get to my last few guests for the second hour, I wanted to tell you about a new study that the folks at Unleash Prosperity have done, which is really instructive about why it is that we're getting so many bad economic and financial policies out of Washington. And so what my friends at Unleash Prosperity did, and you can go to unleashprosperity.com and read that study firsthand, just pull it down, it's free, is they called the study Amateur Hour, and that's what we've had in the White House for the last three and a half years, as an amateur hour, where people who are running the show frankly don't know what they're doing and they're unqualified. And that is especially true when it comes to the economic, financial, commerce, business issues that confront our country. And so the bottom line is that these folks did a survey of the top people at the White House, the top people at the regulatory agencies that have oversight over so many of our industries, the top people in the cabinet who deal with the economy and finance. And what the study found was jaw-dropping. They found that the average number of business experience of all these people who are in these top-level positions was a little over 3 years. 3 years of business experience. The median years of experience was 0. What does that mean? It means that more than half of the people working in the Biden administration who have oversight over our economy have not ever worked for a profit-making business. Think about that. Look, most of you listening to this show have either worked for a profit-making business or hopefully even started a business. And I'm not saying these people haven't started a business. I'm saying they've never even worked for a business. They've never actually earned a paycheck from a private company that makes a profit. What does that mean? That means that they were either people who've worked their whole life in government, or else they're people like Barack Obama who are community organizers, or they're people who are academics who worked in universities in the la-la land of the ivory towers, or they were people, say, who worked in media but didn't really work for or lawyers. And so this is deeply troubling, folks, deeply troubling that these people have no idea what they're talking about. So it's not a surprise they come up with crazy ideas like anti-price gouging rules or to mimic Kamala Harris, anti-price gauging rules, as she calls them. They don't know about the pricing system. These people have no idea how to create a business, how to make a profit, how to meet a payroll, how to hire people. They think government is the source of all of the goods and services that we have, the production of our country. They think it all comes from government. And they view government, they view business as an adversary. And so it's not an oversight that none of these people work for a business. These folks in the White House today, I'm telling you, folks, I know a lot of these people, they don't like business. They don't like business. They don't like the private sector because they've never been in the private sector. And then we looked at Kamala Harris's advisors, and it's a new team, obviously, because she's only been running now officially for president for the last, month or 6 weeks or so. But when we looked at these people, same thing. Only 1 or 2 of them had any business experience out of the top 6 or 8 that we looked at who are kind of running the show. And the thing is that if Kamala Harris were to win the presidency, and, I don't think she will, but if she were to be president, let's face it, it's just going to be musical chairs. The people in the Biden administration are just going to shift positions. Some of them may stay in the same position for another 4 years. And it's going to be more of the same. Only worse, because Kamala doesn't have any business experience herself, and Tim Walz, her running mate, doesn't have any business experience. So this is a big problem. This is amateur hour. These people are as I call them, the not ready for prime time. Let's get some people who know how to run things into our government. That's why this government efficiency commission that Donald Trump wants to run is a great idea. Let's get people who know something in the private sector, like Elon Musk, to take a quick and a deep review of our government agencies and find ways to save hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe trillions. We're spending $7 trillion. I think easily we could cut 20%. And that's if my math is right, about $1.4 trillion. And we could be on the way to a balanced budget. We're not going to tax our way out of this, folks. We're not going to do it. I don't care if Kamala Harris wants to tax every billionaire, take every single penny that they've got. That's not the solution. The solution is to grow the economy, the private sector economy, which pays the bills for government, and to lower the amount of government spending. And that's something Kamala Harris doesn't want to do. And so I'll end this by simply saying that, and I've said this on Fox News several times in the last week when this report came out, if you got on an airplane and you walked by the cockpit and you looked at two pilots sitting behind the wheel of the plane, and that one of them turned to the other and said, "I don't know how to fly this. Do you?" And I don't know how to fly it. Would you get on that airplane? I sure wouldn't. I'd run off the deck of that plane as fast as I could. We've got people who don't know how to run the plane. It's like giving a 13-year-old the keys to a Ferrari and asking them to go 70 miles down the highway. That's not going to end well. And so this explains a lot about the economic ignorance of the people. And look, they may be great academics. They may be fine in their jobs outside of business. But if you don't know anything about business, you can't tell businesses how to operate. And that's what we have. Now, Donald Trump, by the way, and he's not perfect by any means. There are a lot of things I disagree with Donald Trump about, but he has a whole career running businesses. He's a master businessman. He wrote the book about the art of the deal. He's a success, and he knows how things operate. And in my opinion, this is not a hard choice. It really isn't. You got a guy who knows how to run things, who's had 4 years in the White House, did extremely well for our economy and our families and our paychecks. And then you got Kamala Harris, who's a make-believe. And she says, we're going to regulate businesses. We're going to tax businesses. They're the enemy. Where are you going to get the jobs if you tax and regulate our businesses out of existence? It's a real risk you're taking, folks. And I know a lot of people care about the social issues. You may care about abortion or women's right to choose, all these other issues. They're important. I'm not saying they're not important, but I think the kitchen tables right now, the kitchen table issues of paying your bills and making sure America remains prosperous should be number one. And I know for most of you, it is. We've got a great show ahead. I appreciate people tuning in. We will be right back. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC Talk Radio. My next guest is a longtime friend and a brilliant guy who is disrupting a major industry in America, and I love disruptors. I'm talking about Jack Ryan. Many of you know that he's been on the show many times in the past. He is the co-author with John Tamny of a really interesting book called Bringing Adam Smith into the American Home. He is also the co-founder of a company called Rex, which has a major lawsuit that could completely disrupt the housing market and the real estate market. And Jack, thanks so much for joining this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Steve. And I went to New Trier High School.
Oh yeah, I for full disclosure, Jack and I both went to the same high school in Chicago. And by the way, Jack also, one of the things there's so much in your career that I've really admired, including working at Goldman Sachs, but also you taught high school. Was it high school in inner city Chicago?
Yeah, on the south side of Chicago. And by the
Wow.
way, they are as open to Adam Smith as anybody else is. So
They need it more than anybody, right?
Oh my gosh, think of the education on the south side of Chicago. That's a
Well,
topic
what was
for a
that
different
like?
Conversation.
What was it like being in those classrooms?
Well, it was really great because, as I said, Adam Smith, it sounds very intellectual, but his thinking of everyone understands it. And he writes in a very clear way. But the other thing, too, is when you had told people on the south side of Chicago that the tax rates were really huge, they thought it was like 10, 15%.
Right,
students,
right.
When they realized the marginal tax rate is 50%, they were screaming. They couldn't believe that half your money could go to state and local government.
Wait till they get a hold of Kamala Harris. She wants to raise them higher than that. Okay, well, let's get the main order of business today, Jack, is for you to give our listeners an update on, you have a lawsuit that is, tell us about the lawsuit, about Rex, and how you're kind of disrupting a kind of corrupt real estate realtor industry.
Yeah, so we were taking the fees down to zero, as you may know, just like TD Ameritrade and Schwab were doing the stock brokerage business. And that's a big deal. Think about this.
No, hold on, time out. So you say fees, you mean the fees that sellers pay for the realtors to sell the house and for the buyer as well. Okay. And that standard fee is what? Is it still 6%?
It's about 5.6% throughout the country, although New York is at the higher end, closer to 6%.
Okay. Right.
And why that's important is because now the average price of a home in New York City is around $900,000. So that 6% fee, just to make it clear, is $50,000 per home. And your listeners might be saying, for what? And when that's a great question. So it's a big deal. We were taking the fees down to zero, just like TD Ameritrade or Schwab in the stock brokerage industry. And,
so hold on, so if you're taking the fee down to zero, then how do you make money?
Oh, because when someone, just like TD Ameritrade or what I learned at Goldman, when someone wants to buy a home or sell a home, they need lots of other services which you can charge market rates for: mortgages, home insurance, title. Escrow service, moving, managing the house. So all those things can be done for market rates or less and make the brokerage free, just like Schwab does.
Okay, I got it. And so you brought this technology, and I'm sure the realtors didn't like it too much.
Right. And then Zillow, which depends upon agents getting paid big commissions because their revenue comes from advertising, not from the person looking at a home. Remember the old saying that if you're not paying on an internet site, you're the product. They use your eyeballs and they sell them to realtors who want that 6% fee. They joined with the National Association of Realtors, and they enforced this rule called the segregation rule, which pushes people who are not part of this cartel into a part on their website that no one can see.
Right.
So that's how they enforce the price fix.
So so you basically sued them, right, in court?
Yes.
And where do you stand on this?
Well, there's about 7 or 8 lawsuits since ours started. I think we're the catalyst for a lot of this. Our lawsuit is at the appellate court level in northwest part of the United States, and the U.S. Department of Justice joined our case with an amicus brief, and we're hoping to hear back from them in the next 3 or 4 months. So that we can get to a trial. But we were going public at about $1 billion. And as you know, there's triple damages for antitrust enforcements. But you know what else, Steve, is really interesting? I got 2 other thoughts in the short time we have together. One is there was a $1.7 billion verdict won by sellers in Missouri. There was the DOJ just reopened or trying to reopen their investigation in this industry because of things like what happened to Rex. There's NAR members, the National Association of Realtors. There's NAR members suing their own organization for not letting them try to change the way they deliver the service because the rules are set by this trade group called NAR. I could go on forever about other lawsuits are in this industry, but it's such a corrupt industry.
Well, I was thinking, when you first told me about this, when you started this many years ago, that you're right. If you look at stockbroker fees, those have come down. If you look at my father used to be a travel agent. Well, travel agencies' fees have come down. All those kind of service fees have come down. And the one that really hasn't very much has been the realtor fees, because they have basically this kind of cartel, essentially, that is preventing competition. And that is hurt. So in other words, what I'm trying to do is relate to this to our listeners. Why should they care about whether you win the suit or not?
Oh, because one, everyone's complaining about high housing prices, and this kind of tacks on about 5 or 6% of the price of your home. So that's about $50,000 in New York, and then the margins for new home builders are about 7 to 10%. Well, adding this at 6% cost is 50% of their profit. So imagine that every home builder's profits go up from 10% to 15%. How many more homes get built and their margins and the return on investment goes up by 50%? Now, do you want to know another funny thing, Steve, that'll make you laugh than make you cry?
Yep. Steve, I'd rather laugh than cry, but go ahead.
You'll do both. Do you know? Did you see these proposals from a certain candidate who was saying we need to subsidize mortgages and give more down payment to solve the housing crisis?
I have.
So anyway, this has been going on for 50 to 60 years, and this is the part that'll make you laugh or cry. Do you know what's happened to the home ownership rate over the last 50 or 60 years since HUD was created?
It's gone up.
No, it's the exact same. So after all these, this is something that you should talk to with all your fellow economists. But you know, when she's proposing these high home housing these solutions to high housing prices, which are more mortgage insurance, more subsidies, more down payment assistance, et cetera. It hasn't changed. All it's done is increase the price of homes dramatically. And it hasn't changed the home ownership rate, as you would guess from economics. And then, by the way, I don't know if you saw Governor California is now offering $150,000 down payment assistance to people who are undocumented aliens who come into the country. What do you think that's going to do to housing prices in California for people who are not illegal undocumented immigrants?
Well, this is the thing. This is so important because Kamala Harris is saying we're going to just pay people money, to buy a home. But you're right. I think she's offering up to $25,000, and it's not the solution. The solution is to make a better market. And as you know, the realtor fees are a big part of this. The property taxes are out of control in so many of these states, and that adds to the shortage and the cost of housing. And so none of the stuff that Kamala Harris is really talking about are going to benefit the home buyers. What you need to do, in my opinion, Jack, is you got to get our fiscal house in order, get the debt down so that, you can have a lower interest rate on mortgages. The mortgage rate since Donald Trump left office has doubled. Well, obviously that it's going to make housing more expensive. And I have 2 sons that are now in their early 30s. They're about the stage of their life where they start thinking about buying a home. They can't afford it.
Yeah, so one of the root causes is these ridiculous brokerage fees that we're trying to eliminate through private, action by providing an alternative to people who can, sell their homes or buy their homes for no cost. But in addition to that, all this effort by the U.S. government to supposedly increase home ownership through the creation of HUD in the 1960s has only resulted in high home prices, excessive debt, volatile home prices because everyone has very little down payment and lots of leverage, over-regulation, and then huge federal bailouts every 15 years for all these mortgage providers who took on loans because they had to, because the federal government made them, which weren't good loans. And so there's been no benefit that they promised us, which is high home ownership rates. And then all these, to your point about fiscal deficits, what is HUD doing? We're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars every year on HUD. And the result was supposed to be greater home ownership. Where is it? All I see is higher home prices.
So, I mean, I've told,
so I don't cry.
So, I told you this story the last time you were on that, my wife was a realtor but she wasn't a registered realtor when we bought our last house, but she found the house, she did all the work, and the seller, seller's realtor agent, she wanted to keep the whole 6% commission. She didn't do diddly squat, and she wanted, a huge payment for the work that my wife did, and there was really nothing we could do about it.
So, Steve, here's 5 rules I'll give you in the short time we have, and I'm sorry to be speaking quickly, but I know that you're.
Yeah, we've only got a minute left, Jack. So go ahead.
There's 5 things. This rule that if the buyer broker doesn't take it, then the sell side agent takes that fee, even though you found the house on your own.
Yeah, right.
There's the mandatory offer of a buy side commission, which has now been changed to you can offer but don't have to. Well, it's kind of like telling the mob they can't compel you to pay the protection racket, but you can. Well, they're not going to stop. The third is the segregation rule I spoke about earlier. The fourth, every union would love this. If one person joins the NAR in your realtor firm, everybody else has to join also. One vote,
ridiculous.
and you all join the union, and they all get the dues and everything else, and that's to follow the rules. And the last is the forced seizure of data. Every time you sign that document to sell your home, you got to hand over all of your data to the National Association of Realtors. Anyway,
well, I sure hope that you win your case. So now you think that I would think that you might be able to just get a settlement here. And if you did get a settlement, would that solve some of this problem?
We can only solve the segregation issue. That's what we have standing to complain about. The U.S. government has to represent the people of America and all these 4 or 5 things I just mentioned. Only they have the grounds to say, we represent America, and this here's going on to Americans. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Jack. Great going. You're doing a real service for the country. You're a great American, and you went to a great high school. So I love having you on. And, as soon as we get a new development in this story, will you please come on and fill us in? Because, folks, this is how big is the housing industry? It's got to be a $2 trillion, $4 trillion industry. I mean,
oh, my gosh, Steve, it's $3 trillion a year. It's the biggest. And the taking by the NAR is bigger than OPEC. In terms of what's being taken from you, your listeners, the numbers are bigger than OPEC takes to higher.
And by the way, one last thing, Jack. I mean, a lot of our listeners are probably real estate, realtors. And look, I don't have a problem with paying a good real estate agent for finding a good house for me, but I want to negotiate that. I don't want it settled by some association. A good realtor will find a good house and get you a good price, but that's not the way the system works. It's a cartel, and I'm glad you've called them out on this. Jack Ryan, thanks so much for being on the More Money Show, folks. We will be right back.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WBC Talk Radio. Thank you so much for joining on a Saturday afternoon. We are knocking it out of the park on this radio station, largely because we have a great audience, and we have a big audience, and also because, as I say every week, I'm not the best radio talk show host, but I have some of the best guests that you're going to hear on any radio show. And my next guest is no exception to that rule. And that is Mark Matson. His new book, which is a blockbuster bestseller, is called Experiencing the American Dream. Mark, congratulations on the success of the book. And thanks for joining the More Money Show.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm really glad to be with you today.
So I was asking you a little bit about your life. And now you live in the great state of Arizona in Scottsdale. Were you born? Where are you from? Arizona?
Well, no. Initially, in the book, I talk about being born in Charleston, West Virginia. And
where?
Charleston, West Virginia, up in the
Oh my God, I've been to Charleston. That's a pretty tough town. I mean, that's a coal mining town.
Oh yeah. In fact, my grandfather was a coal miner.
Oh my God.
And then from the time he was in middle school, and then he worked at Union Carbide, one of the major chemical companies there. And that's kind of how I latched onto this idea about the American dream, because my grandfather never got the chance to live the American dream. He kind of had a negative attitude about money, a negative attitude about the economy. He was very, had a victim mentality and an entitlement mentality.
Yeah.
And my dad, on the other hand, was an entrepreneur. By the time he was 10 years old, he shined shoes. He sold newspapers. He sold cloverine salve to the coal miners there. And so he believed in the American dream, and he believed if you created enough value for other people, that you could elevate yourself out of that destitute poverty that he was born into.
Well, that's the American dream for sure. And it's also, the key to success is creating value and creating services and products that other people want, right? And so that is, I have been to Charleston, West Virginia. It's not too far from where I live in Maryland. You're about maybe 3 hours away. And it's a tough town. That was a tough place to grow up in, wasn't it? And those were tough periods, for the miners. The coal mining industry has pretty much been destroyed in that area. So what was it like growing up in that town?
Well, it was, my dad finally got me out of there when I was about 5, and we got to Cincinnati, but I still went there every summer to visit the relatives. And, as you drive through those winding roads through the hollers, and you see the destitute poverty and the
I've seen it.
Trash in people's front yard. And my dad said, look, I asked him when I was about 10 years old, how'd you get out of there?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I asked the right questions. And I'm like, well, it sounded like something Yoda would say. I'm like, what does that mean? He said, well, if I just asked myself, why am I doomed to live this way? My life would have come out one way. But I asked, how could I escape this and create prosperity for myself and my family? And based on the questions you ask, you can have a dramatically different outcome.
Yeah. And so what did he end up doing?
Well, he ended up, first he went to the military, and he always taught me to respect people that fought for our country, that created the freedoms that we have. And then he went to work as a insurance sales guy. And, most little kids admire people want to be, maybe a football player or something like that. I wanted to actually sell insurance. I guess I was weird. But I wanted to be in the financial business from the time I was very, very young.
Right. And so you learned a lot of your work ethic probably from your father, for sure. And that's a great attitude that you can, if you don't like the way things are going, change your life, right?
He said, nobody owes you anything.
That's true.
If you don't create value for other people, then you deserve nothing, zero. I believed him then. I believe him now.
So then tell us about, by the way, I'm talking to Mark Madsen, who has a great new book out called Experiencing the American Dream, which is becoming a bestseller. So Mark, tell us how you got, about a little bit about your life then.
So after graduating with a degree in finance and accounting, I went to work as a financial planner. And I went to work with a big brokerage firm and started helping people invest their money. And we were doing stock picking and market timing and track record investing. And, I really wanted to have people have this experience of freedom and an experience of peace of mind around their investing. But by the time I was 27, I had decided that was a very, very destructive way to invest. That was basically, stock picking and market timing were speculating and gambling with money. And my clients were not having a successful experience. And in 1991, with a yellow pad and an overhead projector, I opened up my company called Madsen Money. And today we manage over $10.8 billion for investors all over the United States.
Oh, my God. And so that you do investment management, and now you're also friends with my good friend and my colleague and my co-author of the book that we're coming out with in a couple of weeks called The Trump Economic Miracle. But your friend, how did you meet Arthur Laffer?
Well, I met him at a conference at Dimensional Fund Advisors.
Rex. That's the firm that's run by Rex Sinquefield.
Yeah, and that's how I discovered this investment strategy. Was at a conference, an earlier conference when I was 27, hearing Rex debate Donald Yachman, who was a famous 5-star manager at the time, and Rex proposed this idea that markets are extremely efficient. That Eugene Fama at the University of Chicago created, who won a Nobel Prize for it.
Yeah, right.
But that all the knowable and predictable information is in the market, and it's very difficult to beat the market. So, for the most part, try to achieve market rates of returns. And Rex was at the conference. Dr. Eugene Fama, and then Dr. Art Laffer talked. And my dad and I had dinner with him, and we just really hit it off. Yeah. And then he's been on my academic board for over 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
And just a great guy, did amazing things. I always admired what he did with Ronald Reagan and that great turnaround. So just really admire his work.
Well, he is a great, I think he clearly deserves the Nobel Prize in economics. I think he's one of the most influential economists there's ever been. And of course, he's the author and the godfather of the Laffer curve and supply side economics. So did you grow up in Cincinnati or?
I grew up in Cincinnati and then went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio.
I know Miami, Ohio. My sister went there, so that's a great school.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a great school, and got a degree in finance and accounting, and then started my own company in 1991, and never looked back since then.
So one of the things I like to do, because, I worked at the Wall Street Journal editorial board for 10 years, and we always had, amazing people come in for editorial board meetings, people at the top of their game, whether it was in sports or arts or entertainment or business or finance, people were real change makers and had been successful. So I always ask this question of the people who came in, how, first of all, where did you grow up? And I've asked you that, but also asked them, how do you think, what was the key to your success? What are the 2 or 3 things that you think, as you look back over your career, that really helped make you a success? And I want to ask you that question, Mark.
Well, from the business level, I think it was just the idea. One of the things I talk about in the book is developing the screen of the American dream. The screen. So it's a way of looking at the world that you interpret data about. When you have the screen of the American dream, it's kind of like a mindset of how you see the world. And the way that, and my dad kind of built this into me from the time I was 10 years old. It gave me Think and Grow Rich. And it's the idea that personal independence, personal responsibility, capitalism, and freedom, and the protection of personal property, and that in America you have this great ability that if you create the unimaginable for people and create value, that the system will reward you, and that you can create anything that you want in life, not just going from necessarily one political or economic strata to the next, but create massive wealth and prosperity for other people if you be of service to them. And that one way of looking at the world versus the other way, looking at entitlement, looking at victimization.
Yeah, right.
Looking at money as evil. And that screen of seeing the world was extremely valuable to me. Yeah. And once I started working as a money manager, and another screen or another big breakthrough came when I had always assumed that if you help people, Steve, get more money, the bigger their portfolios got, the more peace of mind and comfort they would have in their life. But what I found was that money and happiness are not really directly related, in that a lot of people have a lot of money, but they're very, very unhappy. Yeah. And some of my clients with $5 or $10 million were among my most unhappy clients because they had fear about the future, they had resentments, they were angry, and the money became a burden to them.
Okay, so let me stop you right there, because you're getting to a critical point here, and it's the question that everyone asks. So money is not the key to happiness. So Mark Madsen, author of Experiencing the American Dream, slip us the answer. What is the key to happiness?
So what I found was, and this is through practical experience, looking at all the clients I've had over the years, the clients that had purpose for their life, a purpose that was greater than money itself, seemed to have, and then there's a lot of research on this now, they tend to live longer, they report higher levels of happiness, they actually create more wealth in life, they have less cancer, they have more fulfilling relationships.
So, because this is so important, and you say a purpose in life, and that certainly makes sense. And so, what does that exactly mean? I mean, so in other words, the purpose in life is not to just make a lot of money, right? It's to serve other people. It might be to serve God. It might be, people have different purposes. What do you think the purpose of life is for people?
I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
It is it's not one size fits all. And we have a class, and also in the book, there's a chapter on how to define your purpose. It's a process you go through, and you ask yourself different questions about the things that are truly important to you. And if you think throughout history, the people that had purpose, whether it was Ronald Reagan, whether it was Martin Luther King, whether it was Kennedy, sending people to the moon, the Wright brothers, all of those people, Disney, they had a purpose that drove them, and that eventually they did create, many of them, a lot of money. But it wasn't the money that drove them. It was the purpose of what they were going to do for other people.
So here's the thing, this is that, you mentioned really successful people who had a purpose in life, and that's really telling. But, most of us are not going to be Orville Wright, or we're not going to be, Bill Gates, or, we're not going to achieve that level of success. But, so, what about ordinary American, the people are just ordinary who, work hard. How do they achieve the happiness?
This is the beautiful thing about purpose. So in the lack of purpose, if I have $100 million, it doesn't bring me any joy. I know that to some people that sounds very paradoxical, but it is absolutely true. You only have to think about people like Elvis Presley or Howard Hughes, or people that have achieved massive amounts of wealth and fame, but were absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you have a purpose for money and your life greater than money itself, then any amount of money will do. So even if I'm only making $30,000, $40,000 a year and I have a sick friend in the hospital, I can get a card at Walmart and go over and visit them and hold their hand and talk to them while they go through a hard situation, if my purpose is love and generosity.
Interesting. Right.
So with a purpose, now if I have $100 million, now I can really put that money to good use and create, fulfillment and happiness for other people.
So, Mark, I'm often asked, because I talk to young people all the time as well, and they always ask, what's the key to success? And I always tell, and I just like your reaction to this, is like, do what you love. If you love what you're doing, I would have loved to be an NFL quarterback, but I wasn't gonna be an NFL quarterback. But I found that I loved economics. I loved I loved writing, and I was able to be a success at that. And so and I even passed up jobs. I think back, I passed up jobs that would have paid me a lot more money, but I wouldn't change anything, that I've done, some things I've done, but I mean, in terms of my career path, I always did what I wanted to do, because if you love what you do, you're going to be good at it.
That is absolutely 100% right. So you define your purpose, what you want to do for other people, and usually it's some kind of being of service to other people. It may make you super rich, may not, but it doesn't matter, because if you're prudent with your money and you invest long term, chances are you will create some wealth and prosperity for yourself. And the other thing, my dad always said the same thing as you did, Steve, which is love. Do something that you love, and the money will come. And you'll never have a terrible day in your life. So you can get up in the morning and say, wow, man, I'm so excited to go do what I do, because it makes a difference. But two, I just love doing it. And inside of that, sure, there's going to be days where you have to do tasks and things you don't want to do. But you want to find that calling in life. And I think today for young people, it's so easy to look on Instagram or Shark Tank and, get rich quick schemes and things like that. Don't be afraid to start at the bottom at an entrepreneurial company and show how hardworking you are and how dedicated you are. Because those entrepreneurs and the people that run that company, they will notice, and you will move up.
And I think, by the way, Mark Batson has been my guest this afternoon. He is the author of a wonderful new book called Experiencing the American Dream that has, I see you have Rob Lowe just in the last minute or so. How do you know the actor Rob Lowe?
That was a pretty interesting story. Well, I tend to buy a lot of my suits at Neiman Marcus. And my guy at Neiman Marcus said, "Hey, Rob Lowe's going to be over here at this trunk show." And I'm like, I don't know about meeting Rob Lowe. I mean, I'm not a big Hollywood, kind of person. I said, but I did like his book. He wrote a very good book himself about stories that I only tell my friends. And so I had read that book. I said, I'll meet Rob. And we really hit it off. He's a Midwestern boy like me. He grew up in Dayton. We just had a lot in common. And
wasn't Rob Lowe the one in Austin Powers?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
he was great. He's a great actor. He's a great.
He was on Parks and Rec too, and he was great. Yeah, he was great in Parks and Rec. And but
that was a great show. I love that show too. Well, you're really blessed.
Well, he said, come and visit me in California sometime. And I'm like, well, that's just stuff people say. That never happens. Yeah. But I did call him when I was in California, and we headed off really well. My wife and his wife Cheryl, and but he's a great dude. I don't know anyone that works harder than he's a great example of the American dream. Yeah, found something he really loved, and he works harder than anybody in Hollywood I know.
Yeah. Well, we all want to experience the American dream, and I love your message that don't be a victim. Don't let people tell you can't do great things, because everybody is capable of it. And I'm concerned, quite frankly, that's why I love your book, that we're teaching kids victimhood in our schools right now. It's terrible, especially minorities. You can't succeed. You've got all these things that are impeding you from being a success. And to me, Mark, that's the worst possible thing you can tell a young person about why they're not going to be able to ride the bike, or why not they're not going to be able to succeed.
It's setting people up for a lifetime of victimhood. My grandfather was offered from working on the line where he used to breathe toxic fumes to working in upper management. Mm-hmm. And he turned it down because he said, I don't want to work for the man. I don't want to be the man.
Right.
And even when he had the opportunity, and that's why I talk about developing the screen of the American dream, so that you can see those opportunities when they present themselves. Otherwise, and everybody's had terrible times in their life. A couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with embolism, and they had to go in and do open heart surgery and repair it. And so it's easy to be a victim and feel sorry for yourself. It's just not a strategy that works. And that's why I look back into West Virginia to that destitute poverty. My dad lived in a house by the railroad tracks where they literally had to cut the tops off of instant carnation milk cans and nail it to the baseboard so rats wouldn't come in their house.
Wow, that's amazing.
So this was massive destitute poverty, and if you can get out of that, you can pretty much get out of anything with the right mindset and the right hard work.
Well, I always tell people, that everybody listening to this show has, in some way, won the lottery of life, because we were born in the greatest country there is. And that's that's a great, great asset. Mark, you are a superstar. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I hope to have you on again soon. And any friend of Arthur Laffer's is a friend of mine. Folks, this is the More Money Show on WABC.